Hello everyone, welcome to History and Culture. In the Forbidden City, Emperor Chongzhen Zhu Yujian set up an altar in the 15th year of the Chongzhen era, 1642. He wished to pray for celestial forces to descend and help him turn the tide. This was in the 15th year of the Chongzhen era, 1642, and the third to last year of Zhu Yujian's life. In late April of that year, Li Zicheng led the peasant army for the third time to besiege Kaifeng, causing a stir in the central plains. Emperor Chongzhen, at a loss, established a fasting hall, worshipped Buddha, and recited scriptures within the Forbidden City. Feeling that these religious practices were ineffective, he summoned the 52nd generation celestial master of the Zhengyi school of Taoism, Zhongnanhai, and ordered him to perform rituals to summon celestial soldiers and generals. The emperor hoped that divine beings could descend to expel the Manchus and suppress the rebels. Similar to the ritual performed in the palace in the 12th year of the Chongzhen era, 1639, this appeared to be another self-comforting act involving divine tricks. However, faced with the imminent collapse of the nation, Emperor Chongzhen could not afford to concern himself with illusions. In the previous year of 1641, in the 8th lunar month, the last elite force of the Ming Dynasty, consisting of 130,000 soldiers, engaged in a decisive battle with the Qing army outside the pass. Unexpectedly, they suffered a disastrous defeat and retreated. After holding out for half a year in the isolated city of Chongzhen, in February of the lunar year 1642, Hong Chengqiu, the Minister of War and concurrently the Governor-General of Jiliao, was captured and surrendered to the Qing army. Subsequently, the renowned General Zhu Dasho, who had also held out in the besieged city of Jinzhou to the point of resorting to cannibalism, was forced to surrender to the Qing army after the city fell. With this, the nearly two-year-long Battle of Songshan-Jinzhou concluded with a devastating defeat for the Ming army. Beyond Shanhaiguan, the Ming dynasty was left with only General Wu Sangui stubbornly defending the isolated city of Ningyuan. The Qing cavalry was just a step away from breaking through Shanhaiguan. Internally, the Ming Empire faced attacks from peasant armies led by Li Zicheng and Zhang Xianzhong, while externally, the Qing army pressed on relentlessly. The once mighty empire was on the verge of collapse. Forced to do the unthinkable, Emperor Chongzhen, who had persistently rejected peace negotiations, secretly ordered Chen Xinjia, the Minister of War, to negotiate peace with Huang Taiji, who had proclaimed himself the Emperor of the Great Qing. Unexpectedly, at a crucial moment in the peace talks, Chen Xinjia's negotiations with the Qing, along with the peace documents, were inadvertently leaked and reported to various places by Chen Xinjia's servant. This caused an uproar in the court, and under the attacks from officials, Chongzhen had no choice but to decide to sacrifice the pawn to save the king. He shifted the blame for the peace negotiations onto Chen Xinjia and subsequently had him executed. Originally, peace negotiations could have been a way for the Ming Empire, facing internal and external threats, to stabilize relations with the Qing and concentrate efforts to deal with the peasant armies. However, since its establishment, the Ming Empire had consistently refused to negotiate or compromise. Coupled with Emperor Chongzhen's concern for his own pride, he reluctantly abandoned the peace talks. With the death of Chen Xinjia, he had no way out, and both the Ming Empire and his personal life began the countdown to their end. Chen Xinjia, standing in for Chongzhen in peace negotiations, was unexpectedly ordered to be executed due to leaked information. Despite faithfully serving the emperor, he was always at the risk of being sacrificed for the greater good, leading to an eerie silence among the courtiers and military officials. Throughout Chongzhen's 17-year reign, 1627 to 1644, he executed 7 governors and 11 provincial officials. Notably, Yuan Chonghuan, the Minister of War for Ji in Liaodong, fell victim to Chongzhen's suspicion and was ordered to be tortured and killed for allegedly falling prey to Manchu misinformation. The same fate awaited Yan Jizu, the governor of Shandong, who was executed for the loss of Jinan to the invading Qing forces. Chongzhen's arbitrary executions and evading responsibility fostered an atmosphere of fear among his officials, making them hesitant to take decisive actions during troubled times. In response, Chongzhen heavily relied on the East Factory and the embroidered uniform guard to monitor ministers. He often resorted to extrajudicial means, executing officials like Xiong Kaiyuan and Jiang Qing, who dared to criticize him. Faced with internal strife and external threats, Chongzhen's narrow-mindedness and desperation manifested in frequent purges and distrust of his subordinates. Chongzhen's self-proclaimed, "I am not the sovereign of a perishing nation, and my subjects are not those of a perishing nation," did not deter him from venting his anger on his ministers or replacing them frequently. In his 17-year rule, he changed the Minister of Justice 17 times, surpassing the total number of cabinet officials in the Ming Dynasty's 276-year history. Just a month after the execution of Chen Xinjia in 1642, Chongzhen faced another blow with the death of his beloved concubine, Tian Fei. Despite the nation's turmoil, Chongzhen, with limited abilities, found solace in his personal interests. He was proficient in playing the guqin and composed ancient Qin pieces like Kong Tong Yin and Lan Kuyu, occasionally playing alongside Tian Fei. Despite some arrogance due to favoritism, Tian Fei remained in line with Chongzhen's thoughts and interests. The death of Tian Fei during the collapse of the dynasty profoundly affected Chongzhen. Grieving her loss, he ordered a 3-day mourning period. However, Chongzhen had little time for prolonged mourning, as the empire's situation deteriorated rapidly. In September of the same year, Li Zicheng's forces breached Kaifeng, causing flooding that claimed the lives of 340,000 defenders and civilians. In a futile attempt to crush Li Zicheng's peasant army, Chongzhen initially released Sun Chuanting, a general who had previously suffered a major defeat against Li Zicheng but had been unjustly imprisoned for over 3 years. Sun Chuanting, now devoid of capable troops, was defeated by Li Zicheng in Hunan, contributing to the peasant army's unchecked advance. Following Sun Chuanting's failure, many officials chose to avoid confronting the enemy, with some even fleeing or changing identities. Left with an army of 200,000, generals Wu Liangyu, tasked with defending Xiangyang, first allowed the looting of the city and then abandoned it, facilitating Li Zicheng's easy capture. Subsequently, Li Zicheng's forces conquered various cities, leaving the central regions of Hunan and Hubei in ruins. In the face of these crises, Chongzhen issued a self-blaming edict, confessing his inability to cope with the repeated calamities and external threats. In 1642, Chongzhen issued his fourth self-blaming edict, acknowledging his exhaustion and helplessness in the face of the worsening situation. The empire is in turmoil. In response, Chongzhen, who once adhered to traditional beliefs in spirits and ghosts, even briefly converted to Catholicism. In the 5th year of Chongzhen's reign, 1632, the Minister of Rites and Grand Secretary of the Wenyuan Pavilion, Su Guangqi, recommended Catholicism to Chongzhen. This delighted the spiritually confused emperor, and, following the preaching of Catholic priests such as Nan Huairan and Tang Ruowang, Chongzhen ordered the removal of all Buddhist statues from the Forbidden City, signifying the allowance of only the existence of the Catholic God, eliminating other idols. Furthermore, due to his brief worship of the Catholic God, Chongzhen ordered all officials with the character, heaven, in their names to change them. For example, Chen Liangma, a judge in the Grand Court, formerly known as Chen Tiangong, was compelled to change his name due to Chongzhen's decree. However, the temporary conversion to Catholicism could not alleviate Chongzhen's inner confusion and the deteriorating state of the Ming Empire. By 1640, Chongzhen's fifth son, Zhu Qihan, died. It was said that on his deathbed, the 5-year-old Zhu Qihan called upon the Bodhisattva Guanyin and accused Chongzhen of destroying Buddhist statues in the Forbidden City. Although the authenticity of this event is disputed, Chongzhen was deeply shaken after Zhu Qihan's death. He ordered the return of the previously removed Buddhist statues and ceased praying to the Catholic God. In fact, Chongzhen's devotion to the Catholic God was insincere. In 1639, a year before Zhu Qihan's death, he had set up an altar in the Forbidden City to summon heavenly soldiers, similar to his actions in 1639, calling upon Taoist master Zhang Yingjing in 1642 to help him summon heavenly soldiers to eliminate internal and external threats. This indicates his desperate and erratic attempts to seek divine intervention in a time of chaos and anxiety. Since 1627, when the 17-year-old Zhu Yujian ascended to the throne, he vigorously tackled the increasingly chaotic state affairs of late Ming. He initially eradicated the influential Wei Zhongxian, devoted himself to state affairs, and regularly attended morning court sessions and night lectures, a departure from the indolence of his grandfather Jiajing Emperor, his uncle Wanli Emperor, and his brother Mingxi Emperor. During Chongzhen's reign, many court officials often stayed overnight at the Wenyuan Pavilion in the Forbidden City due to the emperor's frequent late-night summonses. Compared to his ancestors and older brothers' negligence of governance, Chongzhen not only diligently handled state affairs but also participated actively in the routine lectures. He often discussed state affairs with ministers during these sessions, showing his earnestness in seeking solutions for the country's internal and external challenges. Feeling the internal and external crises and financial constraints of the Ming Empire, Chongzhen adopted frugality. He issued orders to stop the Suzhou-Hangzhou textile production, which was previously controlled by eunuchs in the palace, to prevent harassment of the common people. Chongzhen expressed concern over the burden of constant levies on the people due to various crises and natural disasters. In one incident, Chongzhen, attending a lecture, discovered that his undergarment sleeves were torn. Uncomfortable with the exposed sleeves, he occasionally used his hands to tuck them back in. The lecture master reassured him, stating that the emperor's frugality was virtuous, and there was no need to be concerned. After this comment, Chongzhen no longer concealed the torn sleeves. To mourn the deceased prince and economize on palace expenses, after Zhu Qihan's death in 1640, Chongzhen even temporarily adopted a vegetarian diet. Although his maternal grandmother was concerned and suggested in a dream that he continue with the vegetarian diet, stating that medicine cannot replace meat, Chongzhen resumed eating meat. However, for the last 4 years of his life, he persisted in observing a vegetarian diet for 10 days each month, saving on food expenses. Despite all his efforts, internal and external conflicts persisted, and the Ming Empire faced imminent threats. Expressing his frustration, Chongzhen once confided in his officials, stating, "I am not a ruler of a declining country, but everything seems to indicate the demise of the nation." On the eve of Li Zicheng's capture of Beijing in 1644, he even lamented, "I never intended to be a ruler of a collapsing country." The predicament faced by Chongzhen after ascending to the throne was deeply connected to the climatic changes of the time. According to incomplete statistics, during Chongzhen's 17-year reign, there were 14 instances of severe droughts nationwide, leading to widespread famine and recorded instances of cannibalism. While droughts were not uncommon in Chinese history, the extent and severity of droughts during the late Ming period were alarming. In the 13th year of Chongzhen's reign, 1640, there was a once-in-a-millennium drought, marking the most severe drought event in China since the Han Dynasty. The droughts in the years surrounding 1640 were also extraordinary. The 12th year of Chongzhen's reign, 1639, was a once-in-a-century drought, and the 14th year, 1641, was a once-in-5 centuries event. These drought disasters affected North China and the Northwest, causing widespread suffering. Many regions experienced consecutive years of disasters, with the population facing multiple blows, even up to 9 consecutive crises. According to climate statistics, in the late years of the Ming Dynasty, China was in a cold period of the Little Ice Age, with winter temperatures averaging about 2 degrees Celsius lower than present times. The Little Ice Age, starting in the 13th century and peaking from the mid-16th century to the mid-19th century, is generally defined domestically as the Ming-Qing Little Ice Age, since it coincides with the Ming and Qing dynasties. The impact of a 1 or 2 degree temperature drop during the Little Ice Age might seem insignificant, but in an agrarian society, such abnormal climate changes were sufficient to destroy the societal foundations and significantly weaken the country's economic strength, concurrently generating various social instability factors. In the second year of Chongzhen's reign, 1628, led by Gaoyingxiang, peasants in the ecologically harsh and severely drought-affected northern Shaanxi initiated uprisings. Facing internal challenges, many hungry peasants proclaimed the slogan, "Better to rob and die than to starve to death." Initially, the Ming army had advantages in suppressing the rebellions, but as climate change led to widespread drought and famine, an increasing number of peasants joined the uprising, creating an unstoppable momentum. According to the contemporary historical geographer Gu Jinxiong, the population of the late Ming Dynasty at its peak should have been close to 200 million. However, the Ming government's actual control over taxable households and citizens during this period was only around 50 to 60 million. As the late Ming witnessed famine, drought, land mergers, epidemics, and conflicts, the government's control over the population dwindled further. This simultaneously meant a loss of tax and military resources. Facing border wars against the Manchus and suppressing internal rebellions, the Ming government's expenses kept expanding. The diminishing controlled resources and expanding national expenditure continually squeezed the living space of the Ming government. Born in northern Shaanxi, Li Zicheng, a crucial leader of the later peasant uprisings, initially faced unemployment when the government downsized due to its financial difficulties. After working as a border soldier, he participated in a mutiny due to officers withholding military pay, eventually joining the peasant army. In the 10th year of Chongzhen's reign, 1637, Li Zicheng suffered defeats from Ming generals Hong Chengqiu and Sun Chuanting, forcing him to take refuge in the mountains of Shanglua in the southeast of Shaanxi. Although Ming forces initially succeeded in suppressing rebels, Zhang Xianzhong later rebelled during the severe drought and famine from 1639 to 1641. Subsequently, Li Zicheng emerged from Shanglua, and due to the 3 consecutive years of drought, the famine-stricken peasants flocked to his army, creating an unstoppable force. Facing a similar crisis, the Manchus turned adversity into opportunity. They capitalized on the cold climate change, harsh ecological conditions, and the severe drought on the northern grasslands. Under the impact of climate crises, the ambitious descendants of the Jurchens, later known as Manchus, continuously moved southward, attempting to survive the difficult times by raiding cities, plundering resources, and capturing people. Although both were influenced by climate change, the Manchu people managed to transform the crisis into an opportunity. From a practical perspective, the Manchus had a geographical advantage with a small population in the northeastern territories, agile tactics, and strategic alliances, allowing them to observe the chaos within the Ming dynasty while expanding their own influence. The Ming government's conflicts with Li Zicheng, Zhang Xianzhong, and others allowed the Manchus to benefit from the situation, gaining a significant advantage that Chongzhen's Ming Dynasty lacked. This advantage proved fatal for the Ming Empire. During Emperor Taizong's observation from afar, to cope with internal peasant uprisings and with an agricultural economy facing financial constraints, Chongzhen reluctantly imposed additional levies known as suppressing levies. The burdensome, suppressing levies intensified the hardships on the people, pushing more famine-stricken individuals into the ranks of the peasant army. To fund the so-called military training against rebels, the Ming government was compelled to levy training levies. Additionally, as the Manchus continued their southward invasion, funds were needed for the war in Liaodong, leading to the imposition of Liaoxiang levies. Under the impact of natural disasters and the weight of the suppressing levies, training levies, and Liaoxiang levies, the Ming government, in the later period of Chongzhen's reign, found itself trapped in an inescapable dilemma known as the Chongzhen deadlock. Simply put, the Ming Empire, due to a combination of natural disasters and man-made calamities, experienced financial shortages. These shortages, in turn, exacerbated the impact of natural disasters and man-made calamities. In this vicious cycle, the Chongzhen deadlock of the Ming Empire gradually led it to the brink of destruction. The severe consequences of the vicious cycle known as the Chongzhen deadlock were manifested as Li Zicheng, Zhang Xianzhong, and other peasant armies took advantage of the significant drought and famine in 1639 to initiate uprisings, causing the scale of the peasant rebellion to grow rapidly. In the 15th year of Chongzhen's reign, 1642, while Li Zicheng's peasant army swept through Hunan and the northern part of Hubei, Zhang Xianzhong's forces also swept through Anhui, capturing cities such as Shucheng, Luan, and Luzhou, Hefei. In addition, they trained a navy in Chaohu. To avoid clashes with Li Zicheng's army, Zhang Xianzhong shifted his focus to Hubei. In the 16th year of Chongzhen's reign, 1643, in the lunar 5th month, he captured the strategic town of Wuchang, executed Chu Wangzhu Huakue, and even cannibalized him with his subordinates. Furthermore, Zhang Xianzhong seized over 6 million taels of silver looted from the captured areas to recruit refugees and expand his army. In Wuchang, Zhang Xianzhong proclaimed himself the Great Western King and established the Dashi regime. Simultaneously, Li Zicheng, based in Xiangyang, also declared himself a king. However, Li Zicheng was dissatisfied with Zhang Xianzhong's self-proclamation. Meanwhile, Ming generals Wu Liangyu began counterattacking Zhang Xianzhong's forces. To avoid fighting both Li Zicheng's army and Zhuo Liangyu's Ming forces simultaneously, Zhang Xianzhong led his troops southward to attack Hunan, Jiangxi, and other regions. In the 17th year of Chongzhen's reign, 1644, in the first month, Zhang Xianzhong marched toward Sichuan, initiating a brutal campaign of chaos in Shu. Simultaneously, Li Zicheng, who had initially focused on capturing cities and looting, began to harbor ambitions of contending for dominance with the Ming Dynasty. After capturing Huangzhou, Huanggang, Hubei, Li Zicheng issued a proclamation condemning Emperor Chongzhen and the Ming government. The foolish Ming monarch is unjust, favoring eunuchs, prioritizing the imperial examination, greedy for taxes, imposing heavy punishments. Unable to save the people from water and fire, constantly depleting the military, plundering the wealth of the people, violating women, and extracting marrow and peeling skin. Concerning the captured populace, Li Zicheng issued proclamations offering solace. Our camp has been cultivating benevolence for 10 generations, urgently raising an army of benevolence and righteousness to rescue the people from suffering. Now that we have received the heavens at dawn and personally visited Huangzhou, sending announcements and notifications, the gentry and commoners should not be alarmed, each should follow their natural course. Furthermore, Li Zicheng propagated the message of exempting taxes for 3 years, sparing the lives of the people, which had a significant impact on the famine-stricken population already pushed to the brink of survival due to the 3 major levies imposed by the Ming government. Consequently, wherever Li Zicheng's army went, it became immensely popular. Regarding this shift in allegiance between the peasant armies and the Ming government, the Hanlin Academy compiler Ma Shiqi, in a dialogue with Emperor Chongzhen, pointed out that Li Zicheng was more formidable than Zhang Xianzhong among the peasant armies because Zhang Xianzhong engaged in widespread slaughter, while Li Zicheng strategically bought people's hearts. Now, both Chong and Xian, referring to Li Zicheng and Zhang Xianzhong, are formidable rebels, but handling Xian is easier than handling Chong. The people fear Xian but support Chong. Analyzing Li Zicheng's strategy of distributing wealth and winning hearts after capturing cities, Ma Shiqi explained, the rebel understands the people's grievances and uses suppressing the military to pacify the people as an excuse. In a short time, the deceived commoners surrender, hoping to avoid trouble. The rebel scatters wealth, relieves the poor, and distributes grain to alleviate hunger, binding their determination. Consequently, they view the rebel as their own, forgetting loyalty and righteousness. Concerning how to reverse the situation, Ma Shiqi stated, in reality, how can the rebels conquer various prefectures and counties? Various prefectures and counties willingly submit to the rebels. Therefore, the current situation is advantageous, and the first step is to start with pacifying the people. To pacify the people, the military governors must control their troops, ensuring they do not oppress the people, and the people will not resent the military. However, the Ming government, already trapped in the Chongzhen deadlock, seemed powerless to change people's hearts. Instead, everything in reality continued to exacerbate the vicious cycle of the Chongzhen deadlock. In response, Su Biao, the circuit intendant of Baoding, expressed his frustration in a conversation with Emperor Chongzhen. I have come from Jianghuai, and over thousands of miles, the cities that have fallen are indeed empty, even those with intact walls are mere city ramparts and walls. Resources are depleted, destruction is everywhere, wild grass covers the roads, and there is no sound of chickens or dogs. Not once have I encountered a farmer. What kind of world is this? Your Majesty, with so few people and so little land, how can you govern? Regarding the significant upheavals experienced by regions from the northern plains of Hebei and Shandong, to the central areas of Hunan and Hubei, the eastern regions of Anhui, the southern regions of Hunan and Jiangxi, to the northwest of Shaanxi, Su Biao, based on his first-hand experiences, candidly stated to Emperor Chongzhen, Your Majesty, with so few people and so little land. Upon hearing Su Biao's heartfelt statement, Emperor Chongzhen couldn't help but shed tears, saying, all of this is my fault. Analyzing the downfall of the Ming government during the late Ming and early Qing periods, the scholar Zhang Dai later explained that in the final years of the Ming Dynasty, the discipline of the Ming official army had deteriorated. They frequently plundered the people, and combined with the 3 major levies and various exorbitant taxes, life for the commoners became unbearable. In recent years, the army lacked discipline. Wherever they went, they rampaged and looted, calling it grabbing provisions, leaving towns and markets in ruins. The officials responsible for supplying the military were relentless in collecting overdue taxes, ruthlessly extorting, and tormenting the people. They were hitting and bullying the people, making life unbearable. Zhang Dai, with the perspective of someone who lived through those times, pointed out that Li Zicheng's peasant army, in the later stages, changed its initial tactics of burning, killing, and looting. Li Zicheng ordered, saying, killing cattle and sheep, preparing wine and grain, opening the city gates to welcome King Chuang, Li Zicheng. When King Chuang arrives, do not demand provisions. From then on, people flocked to support him, forgetting their original allegiance. As the popular sentiment shifted in favor of killing cattle and sheep, preparing wine and grain, opening the city gates to welcome King Chuang, the death knell for Chongzhen and the Ming Empire drew ever closer. Facing the overwhelming momentum of Li Zicheng's army, Chongzhen became increasingly anxious. At that time, Sun Chanting, a seasoned general who had previously defeated Li Zicheng multiple times and was released in 1642, was forced to retreat to Shaanxi after being defeated by Li Zicheng's forces in Hunan due to reasons such as a shortage of troops and funds. By the 16th year of Chongzhen's reign, 1643, the only remaining forces within the Ming Empire capable of fighting were the border troops in Liaodong, the remnants of Zhuo Liangyu's forces that had fled to Huguang and other areas, and Sun Chanting's forces, which were stationed in Shaanxi. Sun Chanting, an experienced veteran familiar with the military situation, actively expanded his army and prepared for war after retreating to Shaanxi. He compelled local wealthy households and merchants to donate funds for the military, leading to dissatisfaction among the gentry in Shaanxi, who petitioned the court, accusing Sun Chanting of playing with bandits' funds, and causing the people of Qing to suffer in the midst of chaos. However, Chongzhen, eager for quick results and lacking a clear assessment of the balance of power, fervently hoped for Sun Chanting to engage in battle and eliminate the rebels. In May of the 16th year of Chongzhen's reign, 1643, Zhu Yujian appointed Sun Chanting as the Minister of War and Commander-in-Chief of Military Affairs in 7 provinces, Qin, Shu, Jin, Yu, Chu, Jiang, and Wan, giving him full authority over Central Plains military operations. Despite Zhang Fengxiang, the Vice Minister of War, repeatedly advising Chongzhen to cherish Sun Chanting's newly trained force, which was the last vital army of the Ming Empire, the anxious Chongzhen remained unmoved. He sternly ordered Sun Chanting to engage in battle. Faced with the reluctance to fight from Zhuo Liangyu's forces and the Liaodong border troops, who were unable to move south to counter the Manchus, Zhang Fengxiang, considering the situation, warned Chongzhen to treasure Sun Chanting's newly trained army. However, Chongzhen, desperate for success, insisted on ordering Sun Chanting to battle, and Sun Chanting reluctantly said, "I do not wish to engage hastily, but seeing the urgency of His Majesty's intentions and the pressing opinions of the court, I have no choice but to lead the troops." The forces led by Sun Chanting, who was compelled to engage, later encountered Li Zicheng's army in September of the 16th year of Chongzhen's reign, 1643, in Ji County, Hunan. Due to heavy rain, lack of supplies, and the disruption of supply routes, Sun Chanting's forces suffered a major defeat during the retreat, chased by Li Zicheng. Helpless, Sun Chanting led his troops back to Shaanxi, where some of his officers suggested abandoning Tongguan and retreating to Xi'an. However, Sun Chanting, determined to stand his ground, refused to retreat. When Li Zicheng attacked Tongguan, Sun Chanting led a few thousand remaining soldiers, charging bravely on horseback. In the chaos, he died without even leaving behind a body. Unable to find Sun Chanting's body, Emperor Chongzhen at that time suspected that Sun Chanting had escaped. Consequently, he was unwilling to issue a commendation for Sun Chanting, and the loyal and courageous Sun Chanting, who served the country until his death, never received a fair evaluation. 5 days after Sun Chanting's death, in October of the 16th year of Chongzhen's reign, 1643, Li Zicheng's army occupied the key city of Xi'an in the northwest. At this point, there were still 6 months before the fall of Beijing and Chongzhen's suicide. Despite facing internal and external crises during his 17-year reign, it must be acknowledged that even in the twilight of the empire, from Yuan Chonghuan to Sun Chanting, the Ming Empire did not lack capable and valiant generals. However, the ambitious but inept Chongzhen lacked the ability to steer the crumbling ship of the Ming Empire. On the contrary, he proved to be an unfit captain, and his repeated erroneous decisions in critical moments gradually led the Ming Empire into the abyss of destruction. During Li Zicheng's sweep of the Central Plains, Emperor Taiji of the Qing Dynasty, located in Liaodong, suddenly died on the 9th day of the 8th month in the 16th year of Chongzhen's reign, September 21, 1643. Possibly succumbing to a stroke, Emperor Taiji was still handling state affairs during the day but passed away suddenly in the evening, causing a temporary internal chaos among figures like Dorgan and Huge who sought to seize power. Although there was a temporary lull in the Liaodong theater, Li Zicheng did not halt his advance. In October of the 16th year of Chongzhen's reign, 1643, after capturing Xi'an and then the entire province of Shaanxi, Li Zicheng decided to formally declare himself emperor. Previously, in the third month of the lunar calendar in 1643, after capturing Qianlong, Li Zicheng proclaimed himself New Shun King. However, unsatisfied with this title, in the first month of the 17th year of Chongzhen's reign, 1644, Li Zicheng officially declared himself emperor in Xi'an, announced the capital in Xi'an, established the country as Dashun, and changed the era name to Yongchang. Thus, in 1644, three different era names coexisted in China: the 17th year of the Ming Empire's Chongzhen, the first year of the Xuanji era for the Qing Dynasty in Liaodong, after Dorgan and Huge compromised and ultimately enthroned Fulin, the ninth son of Emperor Taiji, as the Xuanji Emperor, with the era name changed to Xuanji in 1644, and the first year of the Yongchang era for Li Zicheng's established Dashun state. After officially declaring himself emperor, Li Zicheng mobilized his forces, planning to take the route through Shaanxi to attack Beijing. In the second month of the lunar calendar, Li Zicheng successively captured various places in Shaanxi, including Fenzhou, now Fenyang, Yangcheng, Puzhou, and Taiyuan. Except for encountering strong resistance in Daizhou, now part of Xinzhou, and Ningguo Pass, now within the boundaries of Ningguo, Shaanxi, where General Zhou Yujie resisted fiercely, resulting in more than 70,000 casualties for the peasant army, other areas did not face substantial resistance. The fall of Ningguo Pass occurred on the first day of the third month in the 17th year of Chongzhen's reign, 1644. At this time, there were still 18 days until Li Zicheng's peasant army captured Beijing and Chongzhen's suicide. As the gateway to the military stronghold Datong, the fall of Ningguo Pass put Datong in great danger. Due to the fierce resistance and heavy casualties at Ningguo Pass, Li Zicheng ordered the massacre of the city, sparing no one, leading the commanding officer of Datong, Jiang Liang, to be greatly shocked. Seeing the hopeless situation, Jiang Liang immediately surrendered, and subsequently, the commanding officer of Xuanfu, Wang Chengyin, also submitted a surrender letter to Li Zicheng. On March 11, Li Zicheng's Dashun army entered Xuanfu town, causing a stir of joy throughout the city. The military and civilians were all grateful that they had not experienced the calamity of war and escaped the massacre. While Li Zicheng was moving through Shaanxi and attacking Beijing, Chongzhen once again considered the plan to relocate south. He secretly discussed the southern relocation plan with the deputy chief of the left, Li Mingrui. However, fearing opposition from courtiers as in the previous plan for southern relocation, Chongzhen hesitated to announce it publicly. Only after the fall of Ningguo Pass and Datong on the first day of the third month did Chongzhen, with no other options, decide to openly summon the courtiers to discuss the plan for southern relocation. Unexpectedly, the military inspector Guang Xiang was the first to stand up against it. He fervently stated that if Li Mingrui, who advocated for southern relocation, was not killed, it would not be enough to reassure the people. Consequently, other ministers dared not openly discuss the matter further. Helpless and with no face to save, Chongzhen reluctantly pretended, saying, "If the ruler dies, what use is it for me to go?" Seeing that the courtiers dared not support southern relocation, Chongzhen had no choice but to reluctantly express his determination to defend the capital together with the court. If things are unpredictable, and the ruler dies for the state, it is the righteous way. My resolve is determined. Interestingly, Guang Xiang, who vehemently opposed southern relocation, was the first to surrender to the peasant army after Li Zicheng entered Beijing. At the critical moment of life and death for the empire, Guang Xiang displayed intensity and generosity, but on the day when Beijing fell, he shamefully kneeled and surrendered. Faced with such timid and even hypocritical ministers who dared not take responsibility, in a sense, it is not surprising that Chongzhen lamented, "I am not the sovereign of a perishing state, my courtiers are all courtiers of a perishing state." Earlier, shortly after Li Zicheng declared himself emperor in Xi'an, Chongzhen had planned to dispatch the general of Ningyuan, Wu Sangui, to lead the iron cavalry of Guaning to guard the capital. However, since this essentially meant handing over the last important town of Ningyuan in Liaodong to the Manchus, and due to strong opposition from the cabinet ministers, Chongzhen temporarily shelved the plan. But when Ningwu Pass and Datong fell on the same day, Chongzhen had no other option but to order Wu Sangui to abandon the city and enter the pass. In the rush, Wu Sangui, leading tens of thousands of Guaning iron riders and 500,000 civilians, was unable to arrive quickly. Therefore, when Li Zicheng's peasant army breached Beijing on March 19, the Guaning iron cavalry, which was sent to reinforce the capital, had just reached Fengrun in Jili, now Tangshan, Hebei, still hundreds of miles away from Beijing. With the southern relocation plan facing obstacles and no hope for reinforcements, in desperation, on March 16 of that year, Chongzhen summoned civil and military officials to discuss countermeasures. In front of the courtiers, Chongzhen, with tears streaming down his face, and the officials all weeping, discussed strategies. At this time, 3 days remained until the fall of Beijing and Chongzhen's suicide. However, Chongzhen was still devising a last-ditch plan. On March 17, when Li Zicheng's peasant army approached the city, Chongzhen, helpless, kept walking around the forbidden city, calling out loudly, "The officials inside and outside have deceived me. Deceived me." To preserve the flame, Chongzhen decided at this point to send away his eldest son, the Crown Prince Zhu Zijiong. He then summoned his brother-in-law and the cavalry commandant-in-chief, Gong Yonggu, and asked him to escort the Crown Prince south with the household servants. Historical records depict Gong Yonggu as a man with a straightforward and generous personality who earned Chongzhen's trust. He had previously suggested southern relocation to Chongzhen, and now, at the last moment, Chongzhen remembered him, hoping that he could preserve the last spark for the Ming Empire. However, Gong Yonggu knelt and pleaded, "As a loyal subject, I dare not keep armor privately. How can I dare to retain personal guards?" The emperor and minister then wept facing each other, and Gong Yonggu continued, "We have accumulated kindling in the imperial court. We will close the gates and die to repay the emperor." Touched by this, Chongzhen said, "I cannot protect the state. I can only die for the state." Chongzhen's eighth sister, Princess Luan, had passed away a year before the demise of the Ming Dynasty, 1643. Due to the chaotic state affairs, her remains were still at home without burial. 2 days after the conversation between Gong Yonggu and Chongzhen, on March 19, when Beijing fell, Gong Yonggu fulfilled his promise. He gathered his family in front of Princess Luan's coffin, and before dying, he said to his children, "You are all nephews of the emperor. You cannot fall into the enemy's hands and suffer humiliation." He then set his family on fire and committed suicide in front of Princess Luan's spirit, fulfilling the pledge to live and die together with Chongzhen and his ministers. In the blink of an eye, it was the night of March 18th in the 17th year of Chongzhen's reign, 1644, marking the final night of Emperor Chongzhen's life. That night, Li Zicheng's peasant army set up ladders and began to attack Beijing. As the city was on the verge of being breached, around 9 o'clock that night, Chongzhen summoned his 3 children, 16-year-old Crown Prince Zhu Zijiang, 13-year-old Prince Yong Zhu Zijiao, and 9-year-old Prince Ding Zhu Zijiang, to his side. He wanted to see his children for the last time. Upon seeing his 3 sons, still dressed in elaborate imperial attire, Chongzhen was shocked. On that very night, Li Zicheng's peasant army had already breached the outer city of Beijing and was rapidly advancing towards the inner city and the Forbidden City. Like any loving father, Chongzhen was both surprised and reproachful as he said to his children, "At a time like this, why are you still dressed like this? Quickly change your clothes." With these words, the 34-year-old father and emperor of the Ming Empire personally helped his 3 children change into ordinary clothes worn by commoners. He then fastened their belts one by one, saying with a hint of sorrow, "Today, you are still the sons of the emperor. Tomorrow, you will be commoners. In these chaotic times, you must change your identity, call the elderly elderly, and address the slightly older elders as uncle." He continued to advise them, "The state is in ruins, angering heaven and earth, enraging our ancestors. These are the sins and responsibilities of your father and me. But I have already done my best, and the civil and military ministers, each for their selfish desires, refuse to put the country before their families, leading to the ruin of the country. Now, there is no need to ask about good or bad fortune, just act reasonably. I have nothing more to worry about." The 33-year-old Empress Zhou decided to fulfill her final duty as a mother. That night, she held the imperial scepter, and, with tears streaming down her face, went around the entire Forbidden City, advising and comforting the anxious palace maids and eunuchs in each palace. She said, "Calamity has befallen, disaster is imminent. If you have a way out, hurry and escape." Fearing that some palace residents might still hesitate to leave, the dutiful Empress Zhou circled the Forbidden City twice, exhorting the palace residents to escape for their lives. Perhaps in her eyes, as the Empress, she needed to use her life to stand guard in this final moment. After bidding farewell to Chongzhen upon returning to the palace, before her death, Empress Zhou tearfully said to Chongzhen, "I have served the emperor for 18 years, and you never listened to anyone. That's why we are in this situation today." After uttering these words, Empress Zhou hung herself. The disoriented Chongzhen had no time for prolonged grief. He then took a sword and went to the residence of Consort Yuan. After drinking a few cups of fatal wine with Consort Yuan, Chongzhen ordered her to hang herself. Consort Yuan had no choice but to comply. However, the rope broke, and Consort Yuan fell to the ground. Upon standing up, she began to run. Chongzhen chased after her, thrusting the sword into Consort Yuan's shoulder. Subsequently, Chongzhen swung the sword and injured several other consorts. In his view, with the empire about to fall, as his women, they could not fall into the hands of the rebels, so as to preserve their dignity. Next, he arrived at Chanting Palace, where he met his 15-year-old eldest daughter, Princess Chongping. At the time, Princess Chongping was holding onto Chongzhen's robe, crying bitterly. While shedding tears, Chongzhen said, "Child, why were you born into our imperial family in such troubled times?" Then, Chongzhen used his left sleeve to cover his face, attempting to kill his daughter with a sword in his right hand. However, he missed and only cut off Princess Chongping's left arm. Seeing his daughter lying in a pool of blood, Chongzhen trembled violently and could no longer bring himself to strike. He turned away and, in the hall of Zhaojun, personally killed his 6-year-old daughter, Princess Zhaoran. Although his life was at its end, he still yearned for survival. After killing his daughter Princess Zhaoran, Chongzhen had the eunuch Wang Cheng'en sit in front of him and shared a few cups of wine. In the middle of the night, he had someone change him into plain clothes, and then, accompanied by dozens of eunuchs, he left the Forbidden City in an attempt to break out. However, after running through several city gates, they were either repelled by the defending forces or unable to open the gates. After continuous attempts until near dawn, Chongzhen finally gave up and returned to the Forbidden City. By this time, it was the morning of March 19th, the day when the Ming Dynasty was on the verge of collapse. Inside the Forbidden City, Chongzhen once again ordered the palace officials to ring the bells and summon the officials. The bells tolled repeatedly, but the front hall remained empty. No ministers came forward. At this time, Li Zicheng's peasant army had breached the inner city of Beijing and, bathed in the dawn light, was rapidly advancing towards the Forbidden City. In panic, Chongzhen, with the eunuch Wang Cheng'en, ran to the Shouhuang Temple behind the Forbidden City, known as Wansui Hill. Due to the haste of their escape, Chongzhen lost his left shoe. Under a tree, he finally chose to hang himself, bidding a permanent farewell to his 17-year imperial rule and his 34-year-old life. Accompanying him was the eunuch Wang Cheng'en. After Chongzhen's death, Wang Cheng'en also chose to commit suicide, joining Chongzhen in death. The last ones to be buried with the empire were a eunuch, a final funeral participant, someone both loved and hated by the emperors of the Ming Dynasty. After his death, a testament was found on Chongzhen's body. "I, in my feeble virtue, have incurred divine wrath, allowing rebels to approach the capital directly, all due to the mistakes of my ministers. I die, unable to face my ancestors. I remove my crown and robe to expose my face, letting the rebels divide, sparing the lives of the people." Even in death, he blamed his ministers for the downfall. Earlier, in his stubbornness, he had told the eunuchs, "All these ministers are traitors. Every civil official is worthy of death." However, towards the common people in Beijing, he expressed profound sympathy. In his will, he earnestly pleaded with Li Zicheng not to massacre the city in retaliation, hoping that Li Zicheng could provide a way out for the ordinary people. At the time, due to the chaos in Beijing, Li Zicheng's peasant army only discovered his body 2 days after Chongzhen hanged himself. Subsequently, Li Zicheng ordered Chongzhen's body to be carried out from Wansui Hill, placing it beside the East Hua Gate in Beijing. Following Li Zicheng's instructions, the bodies of Chongzhen and Empress Zhou were then embalmed and placed in wooden coffins. Zhao Yigui, the Chongping County official in charge of the burial arrangements for Emperor Chongzhen and Empress Zhou, later recalled that since Chongzhen had not built a tomb during his lifetime, he and scholars and villagers managed to gather a substantial sum of 340,000 coins, with considerable effort. They worked day and night and, on the 4th day of the 4th month of the lunar calendar in 1644, half a month after Emperor Chongzhen hanged himself, they hastily buried the remains of Emperor Chongzhen and Empress Zhou in the tomb of Chongzhen's deceased beloved concubine, consort Tian. Thus, the tomb, originally intended for consort Tian, was transformed into the joint burial place for Emperor Chongzhen and his wife, marking the last of the Ming 13 tombs. Looking back on the past, he struggled, worked hard, and fought, but ultimately chose despair by hanging himself. In this way, he marked the end of the Ming Dynasty with the phrase, "The sovereign dies, and the state perishes." Despite his mediocre abilities, lofty aspirations without corresponding talents, and his inability to turn the tide for the Ming Empire, later generations still bestowed upon him deep sympathy. Objectively speaking, the late Ming Dynasty faced climatic changes, natural disasters, internal party strife, and power struggles caused by eunuch dominance. External threats included the invasion of the Manchu people and internal challenges from peasant uprisings. Financial difficulties exacerbated internal conflicts, and numerous factors were intertwined, making it extremely difficult to reverse the accumulating crisis. In such a situation, expecting Chongzhen, with his mediocre abilities, to shoulder all these responsibilities was unrealistic. Even if a king of extraordinary talents had been in his place, given the historical context of that time, it would have been challenging to reverse the fate of the empire. From this perspective, it was history that shaped the king, not the king who shaped history. Time and space work together. Heroes are not free in their movements, a universal truth across ages. Moreover, he was not a hero. To some extent, he was a prisoner of history, trapped by the deep-rooted ailments of the Ming Empire and powerless to escape. He was pitiable and tragic, a king who, despite all his struggles, could not break free from the historical predicament he found himself in. This was not just the tragedy of a captain, it was also the tragedy of a colossal ship. The conservative Chinese Empire, unable to innovate, could only welcome the rise and fall of dynasties, the cycle of life and death, in the recurring historical patterns, without finding a viable strategy to conquer the vast sea. All they could do was change ships. Chongzhen died, Li Zicheng hurriedly came and left, followed by the southward advance of the Manchus, with Dorgan leading the Qing army to take over Beijing. The captain changed, but the colossal ship of the empire had to navigate through decades of turmoil at the end of the Ming and the beginning of the Qing before welcoming another period of calm. However, Chongzhen was not destined to witness all of this. This is History and Culture Channel. Your support through likes and subscriptions keeps us going strong. See you in our next update. Stay tuned.